Okay. All right, we're live. Let me go in and make sure that everything's cool. Let's see. Yep. Test, test, test. Yeah, we're good. Let's give some people. Tom Whitebear says sounds similar to you, Todd. I wonder what that is. Let's see. So, wait for some people to get into the house here. Got 3 people in. Tom Whitebear evidently thinks that your bio sounds similar to mine, so we're going to have fun reading it in a second. Hey, Sean Warren, South Africa. Janie Hodges, thank you for your continued love, support, and contributions, and everybody else. If these shows resonate with you, please share so we can stay above the mark on the Facebook algorithms, as they like to suppress us as we expand this energy that we call Soulology, which is just a reflection of the universe, adding frequencies to an ever-expanding vibration. Hello, Niga Correro. How are you doing? Okay, got 12 people in the house. All right, let's see now. So we have a special Soul Speaks 5D with a divine feminine by the name of Courtney Beck. And I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. Hello, Linda Burton in Florida. Carrero's in Sydney. Courtney Beck appeared to have it all. She worked in advertising as a well-respected and well-paid strategist for some of the world's top brands, and after years of climbing the corporate ranks, Courtney finally attained her dream position. She had a wonderful family, close circle of friends, and lived in a beautiful home by the water on Australia's upscale Sydney Harbor. Just shy of her Courtney's 35th birthday, and only 2 months into the role she had worked her entire career to land, she experienced what those in the spiritual world know as the dark night of the soul, a time of unexpected and unplanned deep introspection when we question our very purpose here on earth. A divine voice called out to her, asking her to pursue a path she never imagined. The problem for Courtney was that this deeply personal transformation was not easy to explain to her loved ones, nor was there a box for it to fit for it on a company form. She could ignore it and continue down the traditional path she had trod, or she could answer the call, knowing that life as she knew it would change forever. In December 2016, Courtney jumped off the corporate ladder in favor of living a simpler, more meaningful life, pursuing the talent she always had but never talked about, her ability to channel messages from the other side. She began to scribe a series of manuals for life on earth as we are destined to live. These guidebooks are dedicated to all seekers and illuminate a new way forward to greater understanding, meaning, and purpose. Today, Courtney spends her time as a channel, healer, and coach for individuals and organizations. While she makes her home in her native Australia, she has clients all over the world and helps those she works with realize they are capable of more than they ever dreamed possible. So it sounds like a little Soulology energy to me. We've got 20 people in the house. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Courtney. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and sharing space with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hadn't seen your name pop up. Not that means anything, because I don't really float around too much. A couple times a day, I'll go pull some posts off and share them to the group. So you said in the bio that you jumped off the corporate ladder into a lifestyle that included accentuating your to yourself your known abilities and skills that you already knew. So had they been there since you came out of the womb, or
I think so. Yeah, and it was only later on in my life that I found out that my grandmother had abilities as well, but I didn't find that out until she was in her 90s and I was in my 30s. So I'd been having experiences since I was quite young, and seeing, spirits around me and things like that. But it was always a very scary thing for me. So it was never something that I felt comfortable embracing. And because I didn't have a teacher either at the time, it was probably a bit too scary for me to navigate as a kid. So I just heavily suppressed it and chose a very logical career, which obviously exploded in a spectacular fashion.
That must be what Tom Whitebear was talking about with me.
Okay, I would love to hear more about your story too.
Yeah, that would take a few days. Then there's about 3,000 videos. There's probably a few instances you could piece it together. I'm kidding. Yeah. Hello, Elaine Leonard. Yeah. So now, when did you pull it back in? Or I guess that's when it happened. It happened when you went through the dark night of the soul. Was there anything that precipitated that? A lot of these stories that we hear on the show, there's a succession of traumas, or one major trauma, or an illness, or a car accident. Was it anything like that?
Yeah. So I had trauma as a kid, which I think retreating to other worlds, but probably more in an imaginative sense. For me, I spent lots of time drawing, strange mythological creatures, and was very drawn to Egypt and things like that. So mum and dad tell lots of stories about me going to a British Museum exhibition and walking around this exhibition that was all about Egypt, and telling them, we would use this in this way, and speaking in the first person as a 4-year-old.
Wow.
But then all of that just got pushed down. And then it was in my 30s, while I had, in effect, gotten my dream job and reached that top position that I've been working my whole career for, only to get into that seat in that beautiful office and realize that it wasn't anything that I wanted at all.
Yeah.
And so the actual trauma that was happening at the time was that my partner, Jules, was having a whole lot of health challenges. And she was actually questioning her time on earth here at the time, because she'd been going through some pretty significant, I guess, her own dark night of the soul for, 5 years plus. And so because we'd seen all kinds of different medical experts and no one could really help us at the time, I remembered that I'd done Reiki as a 14-year-old to help me cope with really severe asthma. And so I decided to turn back to spirituality to see if I could get any help from the spirit world. And so I guess that's probably what kicked it off. It was this moment of desperation where I felt like I had nothing left but to turn to spirituality. I always joke with people that I think with my spiritual awakening that I kind of got dragged down the freeway with it. I definitely wasn't a willing participant.
Which one of us were?
But then, because I was a strategist, so my job in the business world was to solve problems for big brands. And so being a very logical human being, I decided that meditation would be a good idea to try and just clear my mind to see what I could potentially do working from home. And because my role at the time didn't really allow a lot for a family life. So we've got a daughter as well who's 14. So I was kind of just looking at my life in general and going, I've reached this place. I'm brutally unhappy. We've got so much stuff going on at home. It felt like all of my life was falling apart. So it was through meditation that I actually had what I think was my, I guess, Kundalini awakening, and when the Hindu deity Krishna started coming through.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And let me just say to the two Australians who are making comments, yes, I am drinking Bundaberg ginger beer. No, that's interesting. So, because I've had, we've done over 800 episodes, and I haven't had anyone come on that I can recall that had Krishna come in.
Yeah, it was it was a very interesting experience, because I think I also came out of the womb, Todd, being very anti-religion, and that just seemed to be with me from the moment that I was born. Even as a kid, I found myself arguing with, the religion teacher at school about dinosaurs and timelines and how that was all possible. And I was hard work.
Yeah.
But I'd never looked into Hinduism at all. I'd never looked into religion. If anything, I fiercely, I think I struggle with religion a lot because of the barriers it puts up and how much it segregates people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Krishna came through, it was pretty wild because I'd never actually heard of Krishna.
Yeah, so let me just stop you there for a second because I want to get the feeling for this.
Yeah.
So you're faced with this. You've made these. Hello, South Texas. I'm from Corpus Christi. Kim Miller. So you're just coming out of the dark, or in the dark night of the soul. You've reconnected up to this point. I mean, you have seen disincarnated souls, or whatever you want to call it, when you were younger, and you don't know anything about Hinduism, and all of a sudden Krishna pops in.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, like, one of the other things that I turned to was physical exercise, because I thought, okay, I need ways of calming myself. I need to find clarity. And so I'd been out on a run that morning and gotten back and thought, I'm just going to sit down and do a 5-minute meditation through this very mainstream app called Calm. And so I sat down to do it. But when I sat down to do it, I felt a spiral activate in me. And then I felt my arms had all lit up, and I felt the urge to write. And so before I wrote, I thought, okay, I'm cold. I might just go and have a shower. And it was really interesting. When I was in the shower, I had this moment where I looked down at my body and I heard, so this is the body that you've chosen. And it was just this really strange moment where it was like I was looking at my body for the first time. And then I had lots of strange food cravings, and was really excited to drive the car, which is weird because I always drive the car. Like, it was like someone else had stepped into my body. And then, it was when I got out of the shower and I thought, I just need to get whatever this is out of my system, because my arms were so loaded with something. I just thought, okay, I just need to write. So I sat down and wrote what would end up being the first 4 chapters of Conversations with Krishna, which I didn't know at that stage that it was Krishna. Yeah.
You didn't know. You didn't know at the time it was Krishna.
And it was really strange because it was all about the creation of the universe. And so when I'd done Reiki 2 as, I think I was 15 or 16 at the time, I discovered that I could channel. But channeling was like my dirty little secret. Like, I wouldn't talk about it. Every now and again I'd ask for guidance, but it was just something that I suppressed. And so whilst I'd channeled little bits and pieces in the past, this was really different to anything I'd ever done before. And we were actually going to dinner at a friend's place that night, and Emmy is a yoga teacher, and all I wanted was just an outsider's opinion, just to read it and just to give me their thoughts. So I shoved my computer to her and said, can you just read this? And she said, Court, this is Hindu cosmology. Where did you get this from? And at that point I went, okay, this is different. And then it was the next morning I found out that it was Krishna, because basically I just asked and said, can I ask who I'm speaking to, who this is? And I heard that it was Krishna. And it was from that moment that I got told that I'd be channeling books for the rest of my life. Yeah.
How many books have you written?
We've done 3 now.
Very cool. Very cool.
So the first book is Conversations with Krishna, which is a manual for life on earth as we were destined to live. The second book is Krishna's perspective on the path to enlightenment. And then the third book is all about universal laws, but it's told through the rise and fall of Atlantis.
Wow.
So,
Very interesting. And we can get to it later, but where do people find your books? On Amazon?
So Amazon. The first book I self-published. The other 2 haven't been published yet. And the next book I'm moving on to is actually with the Egyptian goddess Isis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm not specifically
That's
Hindu.
Sexy, man. That's going to be the what is it? The 99.9% shades of pale, of gray, or whatever it is. So you now, so the Krishna thing. I mean, that sounds pretty deep. I mean, and then you talk about you're almost like a different person. You've heard of the term walk-ins.
Yeah.
I wonder, because you hadn't had any Hindu channelings or anything up to that point. No. I always find it interesting, and there's no right or wrong answer, but I always find it interesting when people talk about this type of thing, or that channel a particular essence consistently. Do you feel that it's an aspect of yourself? And I know ultimately everything is one, or do you feel it's an external thing?
I feel like it's an external thing, and I've thought about that a lot. I've wondered if it's a higher version of me. What I guess still blows my mind is when I'm channeling and I get information in different languages, or I'll get certain historical aspects that I would have no idea about, and I'll jump onto Google and be fascinated to see that what's come through actually exists or has been written about in the past, and lots of it's very ancient terminology. So I don't know whether it is a higher part of myself or whether it is Krishna. I'm not sure. Now
has I guess I assume that Isis has already started coming in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was fascinating. So so my partner Jules is a healer as well, and so she sometimes works on me, and so it was really interesting because sometimes when we do what I would call activations, when she's working on me, they'll upgrade certain parts of me. And for a long time, because Krishna's always there leading the treatments, and Krishna's always there when I do healing work with my clients as well. But there was this mysterious Egyptian woman that was sitting in the background for quite a few months, never identifying herself, was just always a little bit off, I guess, in the shadows. And it was only after I finished, because I always get really excited when I'm about to finish a book, because I get to find out what the next.
Uh-oh, she popped off. She'll pop back on. She popped off. Sorry about that. I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, this is really interesting. So she's written 3 books. Hopefully she'll come back. Hopefully she's aware. Let me just send her a note. Hang on one second. Bear with me. We have uninterrupted internet, and so we no longer are the root of the tech problems. Thank you, everybody, for your continued love and support and contributions, for helping us keep going. Let me tell her. Here she is. Okay, she's back. Let's see. Maybe her signal. Oh, there you go. You back?
Hi. Yeah. So we've actually got a cyclone that is due to hit apparently where we are in the next hour or so. So it could be that our technology here is going haywire.
Well, there's no coincidences. All right. But you're anchoring it, you and Jules. Now, you were saying that you like when you get to the end of a book because you get to know.
For me, it's ridiculously exciting because I get to find out what we're going to be writing about next. So before I actually quit the strategy world, and I'd openly started telling people that I really didn't enjoy my job and that I didn't feel connected to it anymore. And people would always ask me, Court, what would you do if you weren't doing strategy though? Like, you're so good at it. And I would say to people, I just want someone to give me a computer lab where I can sit and learn all the information in the world. And people just look at me like I'd lost my mind. But that was my dream. I've always loved learning and, reading, and always loved history. And so I guess I got my wish in that, all of the books that we're channeling, it's just pure new information.
Now you're so you are a practitioner in addition to being an author, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what type of healing do you do?
So I do, so I shamanically journey in my mind to do my healing treatments in the spiritual plane. So I work with Krishna there, Isis, a really hilarious Aztec healer called Mariana, and a white witch called Mara. So the 5 of us work together. But my job is basically to scribe. So I record everything that I'm seeing and hearing for the clients. So basically where we work is this beautiful rainforest setting where there's a healing table. And when I'm there, when I go in, the client's already there. And I just record everything that's coming through, and that's how we work.
So basically it's like a tune-up, like a diagnostic check. And
Yeah, so we do everything from, you know, clearing energy to removing trauma, lots of past life stuff, basically whatever comes up and whatever people want to work on, we work on.
And what type of healer is Jules?
So Jules is going more down the shamanic path. So she just came back recently from 3 months in Ecuador, interviewing and working with shamans and healers from the high Andes. So she's where I'm in the sky, she's much more grounded in the earth.
Well, polarities always attract each other, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe now, do you and Jules ever work together in tandem?
No, only in our healings, which are always fascinating because we're both obviously seeing at the same time. But no, never normally with clients. Yeah.
And so now you're just going to start the Isis book, right?
Yep.
And then you're getting the other two published. And so are you working on getting them published? Yeah. Well, you can always self-publish them. I mean, that's, you know, the universe has got your back. Now, you've been doing this for quite some time. Have you seen a change in the last few months in your clients in terms of how awake they are, how receptive they are, how expansive they are, that type of thing?
Yeah, huge change. So when I first started channeling guidance and doing the healings for people, because all of our healing work has always been very much about, I guess, aligning people with their life purpose. But it's been really interesting, the sense of urgency over the last year that I've seen. So it's gone from being very much, you know, this is what you're here to do, and it's all very beautiful. And now I'm getting lots of people sent to me. You know, for instance, photographers who Krishna would like to document the earth as it is now. You know, documentary filmmakers and people who work in medicine. Like I'm working with a doctor at the moment, and, you know, Krishna's assigned him like a special project to work on for if, you know, technology fails, we still need people to be able to diagnose in the future. So the whole reason why I've been told that we're writing the books is that in the year 2020, that we're going to go through some kind of rebalancing of the earth, so that we're tremendously out of balance, you know, with the elements and with each other. And yeah, we're probably not in an amazing place. And I know that there's two very different perspectives on this, is that some people look at the world and see, you know, how much consciousness is raising, and there are lots of people who think that we're in an amazing place. Whereas Krishna talks to me about it being like a spectrum, and that, you know, over the next couple of years, we need to try and reverse a lot of the damage that we're doing to the earth. So Krishna is very environmentally focused. So he speaks to me a lot about equality and how out of balance we are with, you know, people, plants, and animals. That there was a time in the earth when we were all equal, whereas now we're sort of very, very far from that.
Yeah. It's like a caste system. Now, do you have a galactic connection at all? Star family, anything ever come in?
No, nothing like that. I always find whenever I look at Sirius, I feel home, which is probably my own, like I spend lots of time out, you know, looking at the stars. But no, probably not to the extent that other people feel that. Yeah.
There's a comment here from Jenny Smith. Thank you for the comment. It's a quote from Elizabeth April. The end of 2020 marks the ascension date when the entire planet is meant to move into 5D. And there has been other people with that intel. You know, I personally don't get caught up in the linear. I don't really see it, but they have 2020, and, you know, the way numbers work, 2020, you know, would make sense. Yeah. But now, has your intel said, does it happen at the end of 2020, or does it happen during 2020?
No, and I think that's what the logical part of me has been better able to sit with that knowledge, because you know, I was saying to someone the other day, it's not like the Mayan prophecy where it's down to a certain day. It's more, we're going to see a rise in, things like natural disasters and potentially war and things like that. And so we have an opportunity to kind of all band together and to try and raise consciousness rather than it getting a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, channeling, downloads, transmissions to me are a lot like getting a fortune told. In that moment, that may be the trajectory and that may be what looks like it's going to happen, but we are divine and, we can make anything happen, so it's interesting to see all the different perspectives but there are some common threads, and that 2020 kind of stands out, really does.
Yeah. How I think about it is if you think of all of the incredible and, talented people in the world, if we could all band together and really work on the earth, I think so often, we're, as I guess, humankind, we're so focused on the idea of accumulation and I guess, and on the outside world, that if we spent more time looking within and spending time with ourselves, that
was my question.
Yeah.
My question was, what's your perspective on whether we go out and take these actions, to improve the earth versus everyone just taking care of their own shift, you know what I mean? And cleaning up their own house and thereby being an external reflection as within without.
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum with that too. I think it all does begin in our own backyards, and I think there is a lot that we can do, in our local communities that helps raise consciousness and connectedness. Like something that Krishna said to me once. I asked him if you were to sum up everything that you've told me, what would it come down to? And he said that we just need to live with a gentler hand and a kinder heart. And just if we were all a bit kinder to each other, and if we all recognize that, plants and animals have a consciousness too, and we realize how alive the world is around us, how different things would be. And how if we all realize that ripple would effectively spread across the world. But then I do think there's other people who probably, have the balls and the ovaries of steel to do some bigger things as well, which is really exciting too.
Yeah, that's for sure. And a lot of people have done that within their own energy field.
Yeah.
People are coming back from these traumas and that type of thing. Now, do you do any type of events or anything? Do you ever participate in any expos or festivals or anything like that where you have people come in?
Yeah, starting to do that more. I guess for me, I still feel like a bit of a baby in this realm. I'm still very new into this world. So I guess for me, I've just been, working a lot in the background on the books, but definitely starting to do more talks now, and very keen to come to the States as well, because that's where Krishna would like me to focus a lot of my work.
Yeah, we need some help over here.
Yeah, well, I'm actually really drawn to Hawaii, so that's on our list as well.
It's fairly Hawaii's not dense. I mean, but yeah, there's a lot of thick areas in the States. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. So now your client base, are they all on the internet, or do you have a local client base as well?
No, most of my clients are actually in the States. So I've got some that are in France and some in Australia, but a lot of them are in the US. But all of my work is remote, so which is really beautiful for me, because I just go into my trance state, which is always a nice place to be, and it's every healing that we do is totally different, which is amazing as well. But yeah, looking forward to starting on the next book.
And there's a lot of discussion now and awareness of couples, going through this process, and you guys have been you've been at this for a few years and been through some stuff together, and I'm sure individually as well. So what's that been like? I mean, is it a up? Well, you said she's down here and you're up there. I mean, what's that been like? I mean, and what I mean by that is, do you have the normal ups and downs and all that stuff that everybody has? Or are you in a different category? You two?
Oh no, we definitely have those, and I think with Jules going through her, I guess what you would call her healing crisis. That's where she found out that she wanted to be a healer, so that she could help other people get out of what she'd been through. But we often joke that it's a bit like app sharing, because it seems like as soon as my abilities increase, that flows on to Jules, and then it flows on to Isabella, who's our 14-year-old. So she's like a little baby shaman. Like watching Bella work is quite incredible. But no, we go through the same things as what everybody does, and I think that's where I've probably found it the hardest, because lots of my clients seem to have this idea that I'm, calm like a swan, lots of the time, whereas I was saying to Jules the other day, I have these moments where I, will just rage through the house because the cushions on our couch are in the wrong order. And I have these moments where I'm so completely human and still very grounded in this space. And then I'll step into the spiritual plane and have my mind blown in there, and then have to relook at everything all over again. But I think what we've learned is, and what we're still trying to learn, is just surrendering to it. There's a great quote that I love. So one of my favorite human spiritual teachers is Adyashanti. And in his book, The End of Your World, he gives this metaphor of, if you're falling out of a plane, there's no point trying to grab onto things because there's nothing there. So the more we try to grab on, the more we freak out. Whereas if we can just fall, eventually we'll land where we need to be. And I think that's what we've been trying to do as a family, is just to, embrace this process that we're going through and just to keep rolling with it. But it's been very challenging going from the world that we were in, which was very much caught up in, advertising, which is what I used to do, is very caught up in the material world and in money and power. And, for me, I had no idea how much of my identity was wrapped up in my job title. And now, shifting into this totally different space, it's been, I guess, a process of stripping back to the point of what felt like nothing, only to then kind of relearn, who we all are.
Yeah. So, and people talk a lot every day about these energies, energy, whatever, solar flares, or, energies or comets or full moons, or, the energies coming down collectively and how they impact people physically, emotionally, mentally. Do you still go through those things?
Yeah. I was only saying to someone the other day, I've really felt the full moon since, post going through the spiritual awakening. I never felt affected by the full moons. Whereas now for me, I always feel like a little bit crazy on the day of the full moon. We're in a particularly energetically loaded part of the country in Australia. So, people told us when we moved here that Byron Bay is actually built on obsidian crystal, which apparently brings everyone's stuff to the surface. So it's a place where people come to deal with their stuff, and then they go again. But this place, like where we live, is, right on the caldera of a volcano. And so I think once again, it's just accepting how you feel on the day and just rolling with it versus trying to control anything.
Yeah. But when you're hit with something, whether it's somebody upsets you or cushions in the house that are not straight or energy or full moons, how do you handle that on a personal level?
I am a big reader. So whilst I get so much guidance from the spiritual world, as I said earlier, I really love to learn. So when I'm feeling challenged by things, I will always turn to, spiritual teachers to read and to hear what their experiences have been. So Adyashanti's a favorite. I'm listening to a Byron Katie book at the moment. So for me, it's, I don't know, I've always believed that so many of the answers that we need are in books, and that if we can just read and take in information, that's when I think new sparks can arise. But breathing also helps.
Yeah, breathing. That's right. So, and what's it like going through this with a child in the house? I mean, is that how much do you pick up from her or him, the child?
She's been incredibly amazing with it all because she's seen me work in the corporate world. So I came into her life when she was 6. Bella is Jules's daughter. And she's been incredibly supportive. I think children are so much more open than what we are. She's just been very happy to roll with the process, and obviously we probably have stranger conversations than what a lot of people have in their mainstream houses. But I think it's been great for her. You know, she's obviously going through her teenage years at the moment, you know, knowing and understanding about energy. And I think kids are so much more tapped in as well. I think they come into the world tapped in. So having that knowledge, I think, helps her ride the emotions.
Yeah. Is she pretty chill? I mean, is she pretty chilled out?
Yeah, reasonably. I guess as much as a teenager can be.
Yeah. I've had 4 daughters. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Especially at that age. But I mean, does she, I mean, some of the kids might, they're amazing. I mean, they're amazing, the stuff they're coming out with. I'd love to get, we'd love to get some kids on to the show. And for that matter, couples too. So if Jules is interested and you guys are interested, maybe we could get you guys on and talk about that whole experience, because it is all experiential. You know, it's all about, that to me is where we get our biggest activations, is from hearing how people's experiences were.
Yeah.
Now, on that note, you seem to have a pretty close tie to Egypt. Would you say it's Egypt?
Yeah, definitely. I think I always have, and I think that example that my mum and dad gave of me taking them around the exhibition. But my grandfather served in Egypt in the war, and he would swear black and blue. And he was not a spiritual man, but he would swear black and blue that I was speaking Egyptian in my sleep as a child. So Egypt's on my bucket list to go to, and I think that place will feel a lot
you might transcend when you're there. You might just. So, and have you? Let me ask you this: what has been your most prolific dimensional experience, if you had to pick one?
There was one night where, so I haven't had lots of these experiences since, but there's been, I guess, two experiences that were pretty wild and way out there for me. And I like to think I'm pretty open-minded these days with what happens. But there was one night that I was lying in bed and I wasn't dreaming, but I felt the wall actually fall away and I could see another place. It was like a place with red rocks and almost like what you would imagine Mars to look like. So that was really interesting, but it was so fast. I could just get a grip of what was happening and then it was gone again. But the other really interesting experience that I had was in a journey with Krishna, that he took me through a star, which I can only imagine was probably a portal. But I could only get so far before I felt like I wanted to vomit, and then I had to come back. So it was obviously pushing the limits of me physically somehow. But that was fascinating, and I feel like I haven't really had the chance to get too far into that, but it's definitely, there's so much to explore. It's hard to have the time to do it all.
Yeah, exactly. And has Isabella come to you with any experiences she might have had, or anything that's?
She's very tuned into spirits. So and very tuned into the sadness of other spirits. So frequently, if, we're at the beach, she'll come to me and say that there's a lady that's crying at the beach because she's lost somebody and there's no one there. We went to this amazing old city in Victoria, which was an old mining town called Walhalla. And we were walking through the cemetery there, and Bella wanted to go and console a woman who was by the grave, who was obviously a spirit and wasn't there. And Yeah, and it's challenging because at the time Bella asked me, and I said, "Yeah, that's okay. You go." And Jules was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" I said, "Yeah, we'll just clear her afterwards. We'll just make sure that she's okay and she hasn't picked anything up." Or, but yeah, it's an experience with kids.
Wow. And so you guys have travel plans. You want to head over to the States and do some of the good work over there. You know when you're going to get when do you plan on doing that? Do you know yet?
Well, we're hoping in the next couple of months. That would be our ideal. Yeah, so definitely this year. It feels like for me it was almost like New Year's Eve ticked over and then everything just went on to warp speed. So
yes, that's exactly right. Is that how it's been? Is that how it's been for in your household?
Yeah, and I mean definitely a lot faster since the start of the year. But it's funny, I was chatting to another healer the other day, and because sometimes I give myself a hard time that I'm not embracing this fast enough or moving fast enough. And she said to me, she was like, "Court, you know, you've done in 2 years what I did in 20." So, but she said everything is speeding up. That the next generation will speed up as well. So.
Yeah, you know, because like you were saying about your clients. I mean, people can look at someone like you and think, "Oh, she's got it together. Everything's just smooth as silk all the time." Do you have doubts sometimes? Do you have fears?
Oh yeah, and I think that's totally normal. I still have moments where I think, am I crazy? Is this all happening? But those moments have become less and less. I think that was a lot harder when there was a time where I was still straddling the corporate world and the spiritual world, and that was crazy. Like you talked about walk-ins earlier. When I was in business, I used to be very cutthroat, and
I could see that. I could see the alpha male frequency in you.
Yeah. So, I worked on banks and booze companies, and at one stage I had gambling as well. And I would always joke that if I had cigarettes, I would have been like the devil. And then all of a sudden, as soon as Krishna came in, all of my focuses went to equality and empathy, and I no longer had that cutthroat nature in me anymore.
So I would love to hear Jules's perspective on that metamorphosis that you went through. I bet that would be interesting.
She really struggled with it because I was great at my job when I was who I was before. And then when that shifted, I no longer cared about business. And so I was working on these multi-million-dollar briefs, and it had just became totally boring for me. It wasn't interesting anymore. I didn't care about money, and it was really funny because I would say to people at the time, I just feel like my brain's been swapped, but no one would. I felt like no one understood or took it seriously. And the only evidence that I've got of that was I'd done a Gallup strengths test, which is quite a well-known consulting company. I'd done one of their strengths tests in the strategy world, and my top 5 strengths were like, critical thinking, strategy, logic. It was all very much on the science end. And then I'd done one after my spiritual awakening, and it was equality, empathy. It was like I'd flipped from totally rational to totally emotional and connected. And Jules's perspective on it, I would come home with these briefs while I was still trying to work in that world. And Jules would read them and she's like, "What is this? Like, what have you written?" Because it wasn't any good. It was like I'd lost my ability to do any of that work.
That's what happens when you start dating Krishna. And now you got Isis coming in. Now, the book on Isis that you're going to write, what did you say that was going to be in regard to?
So Krishna's books, I guess, have taken us to where we need to be, I guess, coming into 2020, whereas Isis is picking up and taking us into creating, I guess, what the new earth will be. But that's as much knowledge as I have on it at the moment. So I feel like it's getting closer. I get like an inkling, a bubbling sense that it's not far off starting. So, and then when it does start, it'll be a full on just, for me, it's a feeling of fullness and just needing to get it out. So I'll just channel and do it until it's done.
And so, in terms of what you've received from Krishna, what you know, what little you know coming from Isis, do you see the earth, this realm, changing in what I would refer to as unnatural ways? And what I mean by that is magical ways, fairy tale, fantasy. Do you see that type of progression as the consciousness expands, or do you see more of a deliberate change as we've had in our history?
I think it'll be a combination of both. I think there will be a shift in consciousness in the sense of, I think you've only got to look at things like the increase of veganism to see that people are, more conscious with how we're treating animals, and so I think there will be those more practical aspects of it, and I guess emotional aspects. But then Krishna talks to me a lot about wanting to create a new Atlantis. Which is, very much what the third book that we channeled was about. And in Atlantis, everything was equal, all of the elements and the people, plants and animals. It was like a perfect, I guess it was the web of life, just working as it was born to. So that to me is probably more of the magical element that will hopefully come. But I do think that we're going to have a pretty significant shift, or something is going to have to spark here for us to make that big leap.
Yeah. And do you see people, just in your daily life, not on the internet, do you see people in that special place you're in? Do you see evidence that there's, at the field level, expanded awareness, expanded consciousness, more empathy, that type of thing? Or are you seeing people still walking around as sheeple?
I think when we were still living in Sydney, which is, obviously one of Australia's, big capital cities, I definitely noticed after my spiritual awakening, I really struggled with going back into the city because it was all just concrete and it felt very disconnected. So I think it can be very hard for people to feel connected when they're not surrounded by nature or not in touch with nature in a really natural way. The area that we're living in now, up near Byron Bay, it's a very conscious area. If anything, I always feel very normal living here, whereas in Sydney, I felt like a massive weirdo. Here, I'm at the conservative.
You were a massive weirdo. We all were, right?
Yeah. So, we're really lucky to live in such a conscious place here. But I think it's the challenge of being in the city. If you live in the city and you spend a lot of time in there, I think there has to be a very conscious effort to get out of the city and to get into nature and to go to the beach and the forests and to... I think, all of those natural elements are very healing for us and help us reconnect.
Yeah. And with the work you do, I know you've had people come to you that in one sense or another just woke up, and if somebody came to you today and said, I just woke up, I had a Kundalini experience, my transition grandmother came to talk to me, or whatever the case is, what would be the basic advice you would give them?
To breathe, obviously. I always suggest books to people that I think will help. I think probably, I guess I feel a little bit different to potentially a lot of my more spiritual colleagues, in the sense that I came from a very logical background, and a big part of my job was taking information from brands, figuring out how to communicate them in a way that was understandable to like the general population. So I feel like if someone comes to me and they're in that place, I can deliver information in a very grounded way, and not a way that's probably too woo-woo and might freak them out, because I was very freaked out at the beginning. So
yeah, and I think a lot of people,
I'm more practical.
I think a lot of people still are. If someone like you still doubts themselves and says, "Hey, is this even real?" I mean, we can all relate to that. Everybody on this listening, but I mean, because it really is a path of solitude. I don't care how many people are around you. I mean, it still all happens in here. But we kind of have to hold the line there, kind of have to navigate this thing. Somebody that's just waking up, I can imagine what that must be like now that things have progressed so much. I mean, what would be the one thing you would tell somebody to stay, in order for them to stay balanced, stay centered, stay confident, or whatever, as this thing unfolds, because we're all walking into the unknown.
Yeah, I think for me, what it comes down to is when these people come to me and they've had these awakenings, is that, to me, that's the sign that their purpose is about to activate, and that what they're actually here to do is about to begin. So for me, it's a very exciting time, and it's about, I guess, holding their hand and supporting them through that process and getting them aligned with what they're actually here to do, which is generally to find more meaning. I find that's what people are craving the most, that they just feel disconnected. But yeah, normally my go-to is to go straight to a healing and to get them, mind, body, and heart cleared out, and then to get them some guidance from, Krishna or Isis that would help them step forward in a way that feels right.
Well, if I ever do one with you, nothing against Krishna or Isis, I want to meet that Aztec guy.
Yeah, Mariana. Yeah, she's a badass. She uses fire to cleanse or to actually melt away blocks within the body. So
I'm used to that. The fire has been used on me a lot. Yeah, what were you just saying? Oh my God.
I was going to say, though, I think it is, the spiritual awakening process is an incredibly isolating experience. It was.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I think I was very lucky to have Jules when I went through mine, because the day I walked into her and said, I think I've got someone else inside of me, she was just like, all right, well, let's just roll with it. And so I think I've been very blessed to have her, but it can be very challenging, I think, for people to have all of these new feelings. And, I work with lots of people who have these new abilities that surface and they just don't know what to do with them. They've just kind of like a volcano, they've erupted. And the spiritual awakening process never seems to come in a beautiful, tightly packaged box with a bow. It's kind of,
no, that's for, no, it doesn't work that way. No. So now, when you guys met, you were in the old paradigm. Now, was she too? Was she also like that, or was she more spiritual than you were?
No, so we've been together for so it was 7 years in November, and how we actually met was that. So I was working in advertising at the time, but no one recognized that I was gay. I would still get hit on by guys. And if I was attracted to girls, chances are they would be straight. And so working in advertising, I had friends who said, why don't you start a blog and use your knowledge of marketing and advertising to market yourself? And so I started a blog called Reasons to Date Courtney Beck. And every day I would list a different reason why a woman might like to date me. And it ended up going viral. And so,
oh my God.
Yeah. So Jules used to be in, before she had Bella, Jules was a model, and I obviously worked in advertising. So we both were representing brands. So we connected over that. And then we've been incredibly lucky, I think, to both transition through again to this next layer.
Yeah, that would be
crazy.
That would be a really, really powerful opportunity, I think, for some incredible activations, given the fact that neither one of you were, I don't want to say awake, but you were plugged into the 3D, whatever you want to put it.
We were very plugged in.
Yeah. So then you come home one day and say, I think I've got another person living inside of me, and she doesn't freak out. So it would be a fascinating story if she's interested, and if you're interested, I think it would be.
Yeah, I'm sure she would be, because it was very funny, because before I was ready to embrace my spiritual side, my dad actually had probably his own spiritual awakening, and he was seeing this amazing psychic, and she was, a roadie for the Skyhooks, and very non-typical psychic. And Dad said to me, Court, why don't you go and see her? And I wasn't interested. I was like, Dad, I'm really happy with my life at the moment. I don't need that. And he said, please just go and see her. I'll pay for you to go, you just go. And so I ended up going. And at the time I was working in marketing for a big franchise. And she'd said to me, don't get too, cushy with where you are now, because you're going to go to a creative agency and work there. And you're also going to meet the woman you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And she's got long, dark hair, olive skin. She's incredibly loyal. She used to be a model. She's got a daughter that's got very fair skin with, strawberry blonde curls.
Yeah.
And I walked out of that and was like, this is so specific. It's ridiculous. Like, I just ruled it out. And sure enough, I think it was 2 years later, I met Jules through my blog, and it's couldn't have been more accurate. So
wow. What a fascinating story. I was going to ask you, and I forgot twice the question. What I was going to ask you is, in your work, do you see the mission, the personal mission, being a big part of what these people are waking up to? I think you kind of alluded to that, but a mission in terms of, like, I guess in a way, vocation or passion, or be it creative or whatever. Is that a big part of your relationship, or how else would I put it, in bringing that out in the relationship with your clients?
Yeah, huge part. Probably the core of it, really, because I think if we're doing our purpose and if we're in that, then naturally we feel a lot happier because we're achieving the depth and the meaning that we came here to do. So I think, it's like, for me, when I worked in the strategy world, I was good at it and I liked it, but it didn't bring me joy. And I always envisioned myself using my skills for good and not for evil. So, it's a huge part of it. What I find is that the spirit world is either incredibly specific, like freakishly specific with what people are here to do, or it'll be much broader in the sense of, you're a healer, and you could bring that to life in any number of different ways. Like, I work with, healers that are chefs and they heal through food. My dad's a DJ and he's a healer.
Really?
Because, so when I told him that, he's like, how can I be a healer? I'm a DJ. And Krishna said, but people release trauma when they're on the dance floor.
Yeah.
So it can either be very specific or quite loose, depending.
There's a lot of ways. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to heal. That's a really good point. It really is. I mean, through writing or poetry or art or music, or there's just a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Transforming things. People that redo things. Building.
I think
things.
what I find, though, is I think probably the biggest challenge is sometimes when the guidance comes through, it can be a bit like a grenade for people, in that I think we're very good at thinking of ourselves down here, whereas the spirit world sees our highest potential, which is up here. So often, when that guidance comes through, it can be very hard for people to digest, because they've seen themselves in a certain way their whole life, and been told that they can't do things, only to finally be told that they can. And then they don't have the stepping stones to get there. Yeah.
They give you the pieces and you got to put them together.
Yeah.
That's how my relationship's always been. And you're right, though. I think, just based on my work and the people I've talked to and my own experiences, if any of us could see what, quote unquote, they see looking at us, it would be a quantum leap immediately. I mean, we are the ones down. Sure. We're the ones down here doing the work. They're not down here doing the work. Not to take anything away from them, but this is a thick experience. It's a very, compared to anyone who's meandered through the ethers and the different dimensions. This is a very dense place. So, but we all showed up. And we're all in this together, whether we like it or not. There is oneness. Yeah. I've enjoyed it. I really have. I'd love to talk to you and Jules.
Yes, I'll see what's up for it.
See if you guys, see if I can get, I know Morgan's already on it. I saw a comment she made. I think people would gain a lot from it. I really do. And I think they gain a lot from you, and probably a lot from Jules, together or separate. I mean, so it's exciting to meet new people. It's exciting to expand awareness of people like you and their stories. And I appreciate it. thank you for sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence and being so kind to sit down with us.
Thank you very much for having me and for listening. I really appreciate it.
It's not a problem. You're very welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. We got, I think, 2 shows tomorrow, and Morgan and I are going to be on Susie Bieber. I'm sorry, Susie, I got your name wrong. We're going to be on her page, on her show at around 2 o'clock New York time. So it's going to be about Sology. We're excited about that. And if you guys want to check it out, it'll be on Susie Bieber's page. Thank you so much. Best to you and Jules and Isabella.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Todd. Thank you, everybody.
Right. Peace out, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.